Dude, I'm snagged. What is going on, everybody, and welcome to the first official episode of Snagged Podcast Network, a show for anglers of all levels by anglers. I am Josh Hunnicutt, and with me on location is my buddy and co-host, Dean Marandino.
What's up, everybody? What's up, everybody? How's it going? What a way to start up. We're live on location here in Oklahoma, just ready to talk some fishing.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be a show dedicated to nothing but fishing. We're talking techniques, baits, rods, reels, everything you need to know about fishing. We're going to talk about it. And, fishing is subjective, right? We're going to talk about stuff that has helped us through our fishing adventures to be successful on the water. So, it's not going to be exactly, but, it's things that might help you along the way.
Absolutely. So, real quick, we'll just get into, I think, your intro first, since you started everything out. I think we go with your intro.
We can do that. Yeah, we'll just do a little bit of introductions, myself and Dean here, and then we're going to talk about our favorite power fishing and finesse fishing techniques, just to kind of start it off with the first episode. But without further ado, well, first, let's talk about this, Dean. I went fishing today, and God Almighty, I'm in a slump.
I don't really know if I can call it a slump, or if it can be considered a slump when, this has been about a week and some change now.
Yeah, it was last week. I fished 4 days straight just about and caught 5 fish.
And most people would be very happy with that, but being such a competitive angler, you settle for nothing but the best.
I try. Dude, I ran everything today. There was
Drop shot.
Did
you throw the crank?
I cranked.
Okay.
Dude, I cranked my ass off today, dude. Cranked my ass off. Dude, I threw rattle traps, crankbaits, jerk baits, everything I could think, right, for winter fishing.
Shaky head.
All right, man.
All right, here we go. See, folks, this is what we're talking about.
These fish were suspended, man, in 40 feet of water, dude. And then the ice I had to break. I had to break through about 60 yards of ice just to get into the main lake off the boat ramp.
Where were you swimming out there? How'd you get out there?
Kayaking, dude.
Okay.
People
don't know.
Yeah, you're right. I'm a kayak angler. I want to be a boat angler, but I ain't got nowhere to put a boat right now. So kayaking is my deal. Doing kayak tournaments, but I'll just give you the introduction. So I'm originally from Jacksonville, Florida. Born and raised for like 20 something years, and I grew up fishing. I've had a rod in my hands since I can remember. My grandfather was a tournament angler. My dad's still a tournament angler. And he taught me everything there was to know. Grew up fishing the St. Johns River, the Rodman Reservoir a lot, and then other bodies of water all throughout Florida. Fished the inlets, red fishing, sheephead, largemouth, snapper, flounder, anything that swims in brackish water or freshwater, I was fishing for it. And so I kind of just grew up doing that. And like I said, I don't remember the first fish I ever caught. I do remember the first fish I ever caught on a lure. The first time I ever got into bass fishing with a lure, my dad was teaching me. Took me to Walmart, told me to pick out a pack of worms, picked out a bag of firetails.
Now let me ask you this, because you say he let you pick out whatever you want from Walmart. Now let's talk about the fact that Walmarts everywhere are just like fishing everywhere. They are completely different. They're stacked with all kinds of different baits. So if you're going to Walmart in Florida around, big reservoirs, you're probably not, running into the same stuff that you're running in Midwestern America.
No.
You probably have more diversity and a little bit more selection.
I can tell you that you're going to find a plethora of speedworms in a Walmart in Florida, but out here in Oklahoma and even Texas, every Walmart I've gone to, you ain't got to find one speedworm.
Now, explain what a speedworm is real quick.
So a speedworm is just a basic straight worm, but the tail is almost a paddle tail, but it's cut out and kind of how would you explain, like a U shape kind of? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if you don't know what a speedworm,
it's similar to a ribbon tail, right?
No, it's more like a paddle tail. It's like a paddle tail, but a piece is cut out of it.
Okay, so
what it does is when you work it through the water, you reel it, and it displaces that water with the tail because the water goes through the hole.
Does it look more like a minnow than it would a worm, or is the profile supposed to act like both?
The body's more like a Cinco.
Okay.
It's more like a Cinco with a paddle tail, basically, is the best way I can kind of explain it. But yeah, you'll find more of them in Florida. But yeah, I picked up the firetail. That was the first worm I ever used. Picked out. We went out crappie fishing, and while we were crappie fishing, we saw these bass fish on the side of the dam, down by some lily pads and stuff. And I caught my first bass on a lure, plastic lure.
That's awesome.
And from that point on, I was pretty much hooked on lure fishing for bass.
Would you say you were snagged?
I wasn't snagged yet. I got snagged later on, for sure. A lot of times, there's a lot of rocks down there.
Okay.
But got into it, doing that kind of fishing with my dad a lot, and then got into sports as a kid, and finally got over sports. And my dad got me into tournament fishing. He introduced me to St. John's Bass Anglers Club down in Florida, and I started fishing with the adults, and then they opened up the junior club, like one of the first junior clubs in Florida, and I got in that and started fishing both sides of that club. Ended up going to the state championships down in Orlando somewhere, like in the Disney World ponds. I can't remember what the name of the chain of lakes are. They're not ponds, they're lakes, but they're small. Went down there. Ended up coming in 15th out of like 80 something, I think.
That's truly awesome. That really is. And so you said the junior league for bass, for the bass tournaments, it was the junior league. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
so
junior.
Is junior going to be like your middle school to high school realm?
At that point, it was middle school to high school. They had us all piled up into one thing. Now, like, there's so many junior angler clubs across the nation that they split them up now. You got younger kids and you got the high schoolers, and they're all split up. And now you got high school leagues and college leagues and all that crap.
Yep.
But yeah, I did that, and I think that was, I don't want to say it was the last time I really tournament fished, but I think it was one of the last times I did it. And then, things happen. Then you kind of go on with life. And then I finally got into the line of work I'm in now and headed out. I was sent out to El Paso, Texas for 6 years, where I didn't see a body of water. And ended up going overseas and had a chance to go to Killeen, Texas, where I was able to pick up fishing again. Started fishing, started really slamming, trying to relearn. I had to relearn how to fish.
I mean, after 6 years, you have to. I mean, like, nobody who fishes, on a semi-regular basis could go 6 years and be able to pick up everything just like they had yesterday.
And it was probably even longer than that, honestly. Like, I think it was probably more close to 10 years, maybe 15 years at that point with, like, bass fishing. But I got me an ugly stick and a spinning reel, went out there and started relearning how to fish and started figuring things out, figuring out what, equipment was best for bass fishing again and all that stuff, man. And just really hitting the creeks real hard helped me learn how to bass fish again. And then 2019, late 2019, early 2020, I finally did what my dad told me to do and joined another bass fishing club, and started fishing that again. And about a year later, ran into Dean at the club, and then we started fishing tournaments.
Yep.
And that's pretty much the story of me, man. How I got back into bass fishing, and now I'm fishing tournaments constantly, whether it be kayak or trying to fish regular tournaments
and
as a co-angler.
So I know that you went from fishing pretty much weekly tournaments in Texas to moving here to Oklahoma, and then not finding those in-person tournaments. So what was the way that you circumvented that whole situation?
So I knew about this prior, and I did it a little bit before I got into the club. Was online kayak tournaments through Tourney X.
Okay.
They had nationwide ones, but so once I got into the club, back into regular fishing as a co-angler, I kind of stopped the whole online fishing tournament stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I got out here and I couldn't find it. They had one club out here. They have one club out here, and they're not affiliated, and they don't really. I didn't really have time to fish with them anyways.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, the time I do have, I do want to fish tournaments. So I got back on there, and I got on Facebook, and I found the Oklahoma Kayak Anglers, and they have, monthly online tournaments, and they're pretty solid. They're pretty legit. They keep track of where you're at as far as where you're fishing, and
standings and everything,
times
like
and stuff like that, and they're really good. So that's where I got back into it, man.
That's awesome. That truly is awesome. So, before we switch it up, why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about your favorite finesse and then your favorite power fishing techniques?
All right. So as far as finesse goes,
and maybe before that, maybe we just kind of preface what kind of categorizes finesse as a technique, and then what categorizes the power technique.
So finesse fishing is a slower technique of fishing. It's slower. It's a lot of lighter tackle, lighter weights, smaller hooks, smaller baits, and really slow moving stuff. While power fishing is basically, you're throwing heavy stuff. You're moving baits through the water, cranking them or stuff like that.
Stuff that displaces the water and makes a lot more noise, or maybe makes a lot more, movement in the water. So finesse, you'd say lighter tackle, lighter baits, lighter equipment altogether, and then
in general. So
have you noticed fishing finesse that you've caught smaller fish?
That's a tough one. So yes, I have caught a lot of small fish on finesse, but all my biggest fish have come on finesse as well.
Okay, so there's no real correlation between the size of the tackle and the size of the fish. It just kind of,
I don't think so, man. I really don't. I don't think there is a correlation. I think a 7-pound bass will bite a flatworm. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree.
Just as much as they'll bite any, big old monster, Zoom old monster or something.
Yep.
I think it's just, when it comes down to the size of fish, I think a lot of it has to do with where they're at and when you're on them. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I didn't mean to get you sidetracked. I think it's good for the listeners to kind of have an idea. When we say finesse and power fishing, we're talking to everyone, so we don't want anybody to feel like they're left out or left behind. This is more of an informative and kind of storytelling experience for everyone. But like you said, go right back to your finesse fishing technique and then power.
So, and I've surprised you before with this, and I'm going to do it again. Most people know me; they know I love drop shotting. I will, every time I'm on a boat, on a kayak, on the bank, I have a drop shot rigged up. I do love it, But I think my favorite is Ned rigging, man.
Yeah.
Ned rig is just, I love bottom contact, and I just love the bite when they hit a Ned rig.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Pick it up, run with it, or they'll slam it. It's just...
And, I mean, if you know both of those techniques, you know that both of the bait sizes that you're using are not big, but they really do. Both of those styles of finesse fish, the drop shot and then the Ned rig, they are really good with catching, you know, good size fish, and the bite is always a lot of fun. I would have to say Ned rig for me is a lot more, you know, of a personal fight with me and the fish. I feel like when that fish hits that hook and that worm, I mean, it's on, you know, from the bite all the way up to the edge of the kayak or edge of the boat. And some of those baits like drop shot, a fish will get pretty tired out. And, you know, maybe not be fighting nearly as much.
Especially, you know, when you drop shot, you're, for the most part, you know, you're doing it when you're in deeper water, so the fish are, you know, getting pulled up, and they're just sluggish anyways from that depth. And,
Yep.
You know, I mean, had some good fights on the drop shot, but I've definitely had way better fights on the Ned rig.
Yeah.
As far as power fishing goes, I like that speed worm, man. I like running the speed worm. I like fishing that grass, and the speed worm's a great power fishing technique, but it's still kind of got the finessiness to it. You know what I mean? It's not loud, but it's a water displacer, and it just goes through the grass so easy. You know what I mean? You don't have to worry. It's such an easy and user-friendly technique if you learn how to do it and know how to do it, which, I mean, we'll talk about in later episodes. But just being able to get it through the grass and keeping it in the grass at that point where you need to keep it is so much easier than when you're throwing like a lipless through the grass, or trying to run a lipless through the grass, or even run a crankbait over grass, because you got to know the depths. You have to know, you know, where that grass is, because you're going to get hung up. You know what I mean? You're going to hook the grass, and you got to rip it out of the grass. So you have to have a special rod for that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, something that's not going to snap off.
Right.
You also have to be running different, you know, types of line, etc. So I can see that. And when you're running the speed worm, are you running it like Texas rig, where it's a
straight Texas rig, man?
Okay.
Usually like a 1/8 ounce weight is what I like to run it on. 1/8 ounce weight. And I'll just, you know, just dig it through that grass, just pull it, like reel it on through. Nice steady speed.
Okay.
I mean, you got to slow your retrieves or speed up your retrieves based on how they're biting. You know what I mean? But and then just the way they hit them, like compared to like the crankbaits and the, you know, the Rapalas and the chatterbaits and stuff. And I'm not gonna say, you know, every hit on one of those baits is, you know, sluggish feeling. There are some really good hits you'll get off of them, but every fish I've caught on a speed worm has just slammed it, dude.
Yeah. And I'm sure when you're talking about kind of a larger profile bait like the speed worm, and you're talking about it moving at a pretty decent rate of speed through the water, a fish is going to have to not only catch up to it, but it also has to figure out what angle it wants to hit that and attack that bait. So I can see how that fight would be a lot of fun.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah, man.
I think that all kind of rolls everything up for yourself. Did you have anything else that you wanted to kind of cover?
No, man. Go ahead and introduce our listeners to yourself, man. Let's hear your story.
Okay, so I am Dean Merendino. I am originally from a small town in North Carolina called Clayton. It's about 30 minutes outside of Raleigh, and I was pretty much raised around some pretty decent bodies of water, some pretty decent rivers. The Noose, to be specific, was one of my home rivers that I used to hit all the time. Jordan Lake, and then other small ponds, those were pretty prevalent when I was growing up. If I was ever with my uncles or even my grandfather, we'd try and, you know, get out there on the water as much as possible. I never really, you know, boat fished per se, or fish from a boat until probably my mid-20s. So early to mid-20s, I'd say. I also, did have, sports being kind of a pretty big part of my life through my teen years. And I shied away from fishing up until I was probably, 6 months from graduating high school, and I picked fishing back up, just on and off. And, life kind of took me away from normal reservoirs, and then I ended up living up in New York, northern New York, away from the city. And I fished a lot of ponds and lakes out there, around the Dexter, New York area, and was catching salmon, was catching bass, was catching, pike, anything that, I could get out on the water for an hour or so and actually catch fish. I was definitely putting in the time. After that, I definitely shied away from fishing for probably 5 years. I would, hit the lake or hit the pond close to my house once I moved down to Georgia, but my job was very demanding, and then I ended up going to Korea for about a year. And then, I moved a couple other times and finally landed in Killeen, like you said, where we ended up meeting. I didn't really get a whole lot of time to fish when I first got there, but I did notice that there was a lot of bass boats always on the highway. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of, good reservoirs within 30 minutes from where we worked and where we lived. So started kind of getting a little bit more interested in joining a bass fishing club, and that's where, like you said, we met with the Texas Bass Anglers. Fished a couple of tournaments, met Josh at a meeting, and I proposed to him that we might want to start fishing some Tuesday night tournaments. So if you're from the Central Texas area, you're probably familiar with Stillhouse or Belton Lakes, and we did end up fishing quite a bit over there. Caught some beautiful bass. A lot of the time it was largemouth, but I did get the chance to hook into a couple of good smallmouth. But so once I, got into full swing of fishing again, I started, buying some more rods and more reels, and, 1 became 2, 2 became 10 really quick. And I wasn't buying the most expensive stuff. I was just, trying to piece together something for every style of bait and technique that I wanted to use.
Yeah, dude, just like how I got 3 boxes of crankbaits and I used 2 of them.
Yeah. I mean, I have a whole hard plastic container filled with every single depth of crankbait you can think of, and unfortunately I have really stuck to probably 2 or 3 of them. But I always have the opportunity to switch up the colors, and based on what the water's doing, based on where the fish are feeding and time of year. It's good to have those opportunities, or those that variation there.
That's what it's all about, though, dude, is getting out there and trying that stuff, man. And I mean, yeah, you're gonna drop a few bucks. You know what I mean? Sometimes you drop more than a few bucks in the lake.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, that's what it's all about, and that's kind of, that's what we're here to do too. Like, kind of like help all you guys out there. Kind of, I don't want to say skip that part, because that part's, part of fishing. You can't really skip that part, but kind of lead y'all, like, based off what we've learned and where we, the stuff that we've become successful on, so you can kind of, skip some of those hardship steps that we had to go through.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, learning through other people's experiences is always very valuable. I think it's equally as valuable to learn them yourselves, but if you can save yourself a little bit of time, or maybe, learn a technique, learn a different way to fish a technique through, our experiences, that to me is pretty valuable. And I think that's kind of where we're focused, is, getting people in the frame of mind that, maybe I don't have to, throw a crankbait. Maybe I can throw a lipless crank versus a deep dive. Maybe I can throw a worm in this scenario. It opens up kind of a Pandora's box of opportunities, experiences, and gives people different ways of thought or of thinking.
So what are you, man? Finesse or power?
I'm a finesse fisherman. By the definition, I would say finesse meets kind of my personality. I'm a lazy fisherman, but I also really like, to hook into pretty active fish. So finesse, but more specifically, I really like shaky head. I've got a awesome shaky head rod that I've ended up catching my PB on, and I prefer a spin reel and spin cast when I'm talking about finesse fishing, and I know you prefer the same.
Right.
I have found that a 7'2" medium heavy has been kind of a sweet spot for me. Anything around 7 foot when you're fishing a kayak or fishing in a bass boat or a pontoon, a 7 foot rod is pretty much a sweet spot for everything. Mm-hmm. But I found it's extremely useful for finesse, and specifically for shaky head. I've been using 1/8 ounce, 1/4 ounce shaky head hooks. I think if the water's a little more calm, I'm gonna go with a lighter weight. If the water's turning and moving a lot more, then I'll use something a little bit heavier, help that bait kind of stick to the bottom.
Depths make a difference too, man.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. A lot of the times I've found that the divine shaky head worms from Sixth Sense have been really the most producing as far as bites for me, and I ended up catching my PB on it, so I have to give them a shout out. My favorite power fishing technique is kind of it's a really unconventional way of fishing a very conventional bait. So I prefer fishing power fishing with a fluke. Zoom flukes are awesome, but the way that I hook them, I prefer to use a flipping hook. So typically you'd use a EWG or you use an offset hook, but I've found flipping hooks give you the best hookup ratio when you're trying to get on to finicky fish who are trying to bite at shallow or anywhere from 3 to 5 feet depth. Those bites are really quick, and if you don't have a good, sharp, well-positioned hook, you're gonna miss the bite. So at first I started out with those EWGs, the extra wide gaps, fishing a size 3/0 or 4/0, and I just felt like the hook was not positioned correctly. So on my own, I just decided I'd throw a flipping hook in there and see how that worked. And I don't fish the fluke with a weight on it. I always do weightless, and I'll toss it out, I'll let it kind of, do its thing, floating, then kind of dive down a little bit. And then I give it a couple, tugs towards me, and it just gives a real lifelike presentation. So those fish are drawn to it.
Do you like the super flukes or the normal size flukes?
I like the normal size flukes. Personally, I haven't fished the super flukes and had any bites. I've always noticed that the fish want something, everyone says match the hatch, but they want something that's similar in the size of the bait that are running at that time. So I noticed at that time that the bait that were running were, no longer than 4 inches really. Yeah. And the regular size fluke was perfect size. And the super fluke just didn't really seem to produce the same amount of bites.
So if y'all don't know what a fluke is basically, it's a soft plastic bait and it looks like a fish. So if you ever gone to a tackle store or Walmart or wherever, you can find flukes at Walmart. They're always at Walmart.
Yep.
But it's literally, it looks just like a minnow or a small bait fish.
Yep.
And what Dean's talking about when it comes to these, and we're definitely going to do a episode about flukes, and I'm going to let Dean take the reins on that one because he knows a lot more about fluke fishing than I do. But the size of these bait, and it goes for a lot of baits. It goes for spinner bait blades and everything. The size of the bait fish that these bass are chasing, it's a big deal when it comes to this kind of fishing.
So I do think that it's good to identify that the Zoom flukes are pretty prevalent in Walmarts. I would definitely look at some of the larger bait stores in your local area, or just in your area altogether, because it tends to be these really wacky colors like bubble gum and things like that. Yeah. And not saying anything bad about those colors, but typically you're gonna have better luck when you can have more realistic colored baits.
Right.
So white is a great color, pearlescent white. Some of those clear baits, there's a disco green and then a disco violet. They've got some like awesome kind of realistic effect to them that just drives fish crazy. So I think that's it for the power fishing technique. The rod that I like to use for that style power fishing technique is going to be a St. Croix Bass X. It's a pretty reliable and pretty, middle of the road price line. You're not going to, pay more than maybe $120 including tax for a St. Croix Bass X. But St. Croix does have a huge line of, higher end rods. So just make sure that if you are looking for that rod, you're zeroed in on the Bass X, because you can get very pricey with St. Croix very quick. So, but they're a great rods. Rod for sure.
Good rods.
And then lastly, just 7'1", 7 foot, 7'2". Like I said before, anything 7 foot, in that range is gonna be a sturdy rod and a good length for decent cast distance. And it's, again, that one's a medium heavy rod as well. So I think that is all I've got. I could talk real quick about my favorite spinning reel and favorite bait cast reel, but maybe we save that for another day.
Yeah, because it's all those things are gonna come into play when we start talking about other baits and other techniques that we use and different things that we talk about through all these episodes. We're gonna bring y'all quite a bit of content, and we're gonna do our best to bring it to y'all weekly.
Yep.
We're just doing this. We're doing this because it's fun. We're doing this because we like talking fishing. It gives us an hour to just nerd out and talk about something we love to do.
So I think it's good for us to bring up that we're going to try and do it weekly. I think it's also good for us to probably bring up the fact that we have a Facebook page.
Yes, we do. So we're gonna post things, pictures and whatnot, and when we talk about a bait, we'll post a bait so y'all know, or something of that nature on our Facebook. You can find us on Instagram at Snagged. Just type in Snagged and it'll bring it up. You'll see a picture of a crankbait up there or something, a couple hooks, see our name.
Same icon as the podcast has itself. So we'll be uploading that content. Try and do it weekly, and then communicate. Feel free to communicate with us throughout the week and everything like that in between the episodes. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, we're trying to be negativity free. So if you don't have anything good to say, then try and keep that to yourself.
Right. I mean, this is a chance for us all to get together and talk about the one thing we love, fishing. You got questions and maybe we can answer them. Like Dean said, just come stop by, leave a comment. We're going to try to post these to YouTube as well as multiple different podcast networks. And then, you can just stop by and talk fishing with us. You just talk about what's your favorite techniques. Drop a line, let us know. And it's going to be fun. It's going to be a good time.
So next week, I think we're going to be dropping our second episode, and that one is going to be on what, Josh?
Bank fishing for bass.
Bank fishing
One
for
of the
bass.
most primitive ways we begin our fishing adventures.
Yep. The journey for everyone pretty much begins at the bank.
Yep.
And then, as you get the fever, you end up kind of upgrading your...
let me go buy a boat. Let me go buy a kayak.
Yeah.
It's just gonna... And then, once you catch that fish, it's over. I'm sorry. I don't know what to tell y'all.
Yep. It's definitely an addiction at that point.
Then you're dropping, thousands of dollars in the lakes,
And then when you lose it, then hopefully it floats right back up to the top. Like
Speaking of which, I got my crankbait. I got my crankbait back again today.
No way.
I lost one last week and I got a crankbait back today, man.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Hey.
Lucky SOB.
I don't know what it is about that grass. It gives you your bait back, dude. I love it.
Well, tune in next week, and we look forward to talking with you all.